Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Our webinar will be started in a few minutes. We would like to share some information before we start. You may use the translation feature at the bottom right of your screen. You can find the globe picture on it. There you can have the Indonesian language translation during this event. During the questions and answer session, feel free to write your questions in the Q&A feature, and don't forget to mention your name and also your institution. The moderator will be then deliver your questions to the speakers. And last but not least, the attendance and evaluation forms will be provided at the end of this event. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon, everyone. The Honorable Director General of Public Health, Ministry of Health of the Republic of Indonesia, Dr. Maria Endang Sumiwi, Master of Public Health, represented by Dr. Erna Mulati, MSc, as the Director of Nutrition and Maternal and Child Health, Ministry of Health, the Honorable Director for Food and Agriculture, National Development Planning Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Insinyur Anang Nugroho Setio Mulyono, the Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, Professor Ari Fahrial Syam, Honorable Professor Badriul Hegar as the Director of IMERI, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, Professor Mukhtaruddin Mansur as the Director of SEA-MEOREC Fund, and Dr. Nirarta Samadi as the Co-Chair Volu Country Platform, Jennifer Rosenzweig as World Food Program Country Director at Interim, Dr. Nurul Ratna Mutumanikam as the Head of Department of Nutrition, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, Dr. Dian Novita Chandra as the Head of Master of Nutrition Study Program, Department of Nutrition, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia. We are also very honored to welcome our speakers and moderator for today's webinar, Honorable Dr. Saskia DP, Ms. Scarlett Benson, Dr. Rina Agustina, and Dr. Helda Hussein. And welcome all participants of this international webinar. My name is Dafrina, and together with my colleague Nadia, we are really honored to be the Master of Ceremony for today's event. On behalf of the organizing committee, we would like to welcome all of you to the international webinar, Nutrition, Health, and Sustainability, Lesson Learned for Programs and Research Needs. This webinar is proudly presented by Master of Nutrition Study Program, Department of Nutrition, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, in collaboration with Human Nutrition Research Center, IMERI, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, Volu Coalition Indonesia, Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization, Regional Center for Food and Nutrition, or SEA-MEOREC Fund, World Food Program, and Master of Nutrition Study Program, Alumni Association, or ILUNI. The objective of this webinar is to share the current evidence and update information on nutrition, health, and sustainability, as we will explore the lessons learned and potential research needs and inform the approach that can be used in policies for promotive and preventive healthcare in the community. This webinar will also be streamed online via YouTube channel of World Resources Institute, WRI, or WRI Indonesia. The link will be shared in the chat box. First of all, let me deliver the agenda of today's event. We will set the ball rolling with welcome remarks and also opening remarks, and it will be followed by keynote lectures, main event and discussion, and finally closing of this event. Let's get started with the first agenda. We would like to invite Dr. Dian Novita Chandra as the Head of Master of Nutrition Study Program, Department of Nutrition, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia. To Dr. Dian, the time is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Dafrina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, I would like to express my appreciation and gratitude to the honorable guests, distinguished speakers, moderator, committee, and all participants. Good afternoon, and thank you for attending this webinar. It is an honor and privilege for me to welcome all of you to the webinar, Nutrition, Health, and Sustainability, Lesson Learned for Programs and Research Needs. On behalf of the Master of Nutrition Study Program, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, I would like to take this opportunity to express my most profound appreciation to the Human Nutrition Research Center Indonesia Medical Education and Research Institute, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, to Food and Land Use Coalition Indonesia, the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization Regional Center for Food and Nutrition, to World Food Program and Master of Nutrition Study Program Alumni Association for collaborating with Master of Nutrition Study Program in organizing this webinar. This webinar is conducted for the audience to share the current evidence and update information on nutrition, health, and sustainability, and provide recommendation on programs and policies that can be carried out by institutions and especially for educational institutions that can generate potential research topics. We are already known that Indonesia still faces a triple burden of malnutrition with stunted, overweight, and obesity, as well as the increasing incidence of non-communicable diseases. We also face serious challenges in food security and nutrition in the availability and affordability of nutritious foods. To improve access to nutritious food for all, especially those most vulnerable to malnutrition, food system transformation is essential, which requires the involvement of multi-stakeholders, including nutrition, health, agriculture, environment, economy, and civil society. As a leading university in Southeast Asia, Universitas Indonesia needs to participate in supporting nutrition, health, and sustainability implementation as part of efforts to solve nutritional problems in Indonesia. This is in line with the vision and mission of the Master of Nutrition Study Program. One of the specific objectives of the study program is to provide quality higher education in the field of nutrition, with one of the goals is implementing blended learning with experts from within and outside the country. One of the modules in Master of Nutrition Study Program, the Food Science or Ilmu Bahan Makanan module, is concerned for utilization of food ingredients and innovation in its application and explaining the planetary healthy diet and environmentally friendly food innovation, thus while supporting nutrition, health, and sustainability implementation. The learning outcomes of the module are the students able to demonstrate in-depth understanding of nutrition, food, and health, to develop knowledge and technology through evidence-based research in the fields of nutrition, food and health, and to solve problems in the fields of nutrition, food and health in the national health system through an inter or multidisciplinary approach. So through this webinar, we will also introduce, this is the elective module for the undergraduate medical program, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, Diet, Planet, and Health, or Diet, Planet, dan Kesehatan in Indonesian terminology. So the aim of this module, students are able to explain the optimal growth and development at all life stages, educate people to prevent all forms of malnutrition, develop a dietary pattern, and reduce food loss and waste. The scopes of this module are also in line with the transformation of global food system to reduce its effect on human health and environmental stability, supporting by the Eat-Lancet Commission on Healthy Diets from Sustainable Food System. This module provides opportunities for education to support nutrition, health, and sustainability. We will be very glad to welcome you to join with us in these modules to support Kampus Merdeka, Merdeka Belajar, or Freedom to Learn. Last, we hope that this webinar can also provide broad insights for our students, and I am sure that this webinar will be profitable and fruitful for everyone present here. Thank you for your attention. I'll give back to Dr. Davina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dian, for the very warm welcome to all participants and also insightful information of the module. We will continue with the welcome remarks from Professor Badriel Hegar as the Director of IMERI, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia.
Good afternoon, Honorable Dean FKUI, inviting guests, speaker, and all participants. We know that nutrition and food security is a big issue right now. And we see a gap between what is expected and the reality in community. One of the possible causes for this condition is what we are doing has not fully answered the basic problem that exists in society. Or maybe even what we are doing does not address the real problem as the cause of the gap. The problem of nutrition is very complex. It needs to be studied comprehensively by multi-stakeholders so that the problem can be understood holistically. And more importantly, how we can see some of this problem to be the focus of a challenge which need to be answered with a priority action, whether in research, healthcare, education, or policy. Stunting is an example of very complex national problem. This issue must be assessed carefully, comprehensively, and holistically so that we do not lose focus in implementing this issue as a strategy and action, which in the end, we will answer the real problem. Master of Nutrition Study Program, Department of Nutrition FKUI, as a level of intellectual education in medical field, should be able to take a role in solving this problem by translating the issue into master study program research challenges that will be carried out by the students. Therefore, why Master of Nutrition Study Program and research centers such as IMERI FKUI are two sides, but they are need each other in creating better healthcare and quality of life through innovation in research of medical science. Many work we can do together in this area. IMERI FKUI is waiting for young researchers for all over Indonesia, including students from the Master of Nutrition Study Program FKUI, to build a convergent research, grow together to become a mature and talented researchers under inspiring IMERI researchers' leadership. So let's work together to build and sustain Indonesian research capacity. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you, Professor Hagar, for the insightful remarks. We will now invite Professor Mukhtaruddin Mansur as the Director of CMEO RECFON to share his welcome remark.
Dear organizing committee and all participants, greetings from CMEO RECFON. I am Mukhtaruddin, the Director of CMEO RECFON, would like to appreciate the Prodi Magister Ilmu Gizi FKUI for conducting this webinar on nutrition, health and sustainability, lesson learned, and potential research needs. This topic is very important to improve evidence-based policy and intervention of health and nutrition problems nationally and globally. This topic is in line with the CMEO RECFON research themes that have been arranged and included in the third five-year development plan document in responding the food system transformation. CMEO RECFON invite all parties to build the collaboration to strengthen the health and nutrition promotion through the local food-based approach. Enjoy the webinar and more power to build better future generation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Mukhtar, for the excellent remarks. We will continue with the next welcome remark from Dr. Nirartha Samadi as the co-chair of VOLU Country Platform.
My name is Nirartha Samadi, and I am a co-chair of the Food and Land Use Country Platform. Welcome to the Nutrition, Health and Sustainability lessons learned for programs and research needs. Distinguished participants, the Food and Land Use Coalition's global report in 2019 found that the hidden costs of our global food and land use system sum up to $12 trillion compared to the market value of the global food system of around $10 trillion. Without changes to the current system, these hidden costs will increase to around $4 trillion by 2050. In Indonesia alone, the figure for these hidden costs is predicted to be at $62.7 billion. This figure includes costs due to impact on the environment, economy, social conflict, and the largest on the health sector, namely obesity, malnutrition, air pollution, and exposure to pesticides. Come to think of it, we should not choose between health, natural sustainability, and food security. Attempts to address the problem separately will not provide a solution. We need land use and food management strategies to be considered and managed as a system, where there are close links between nutrition, agriculture, pollution, biodiversity, water, and greenhouse gases. Launched in 2017, Food and Land Use Coalition, or known shortly as FOLU, brings together stakeholders to accelerate the transformation of food and land use systems to deliver the SDGs, Paris Agreement, and Aichi biodiversity targets. FOLU is a self-governed coalition of diverse institutions with an expansive and influential network reaching across global and national levels and delivering robust evidence base for actions. Our missions are fourfold. That is to protect and restore the planet's natural resources and ecosystem, to build a more resilient, prosperous rural economy for farmers and their families, to save food and land use systems so they become net greenhouse gas sink, and also to find a healthier, less wasteful way to feed 9 billion plus people by 2030s. FOLU's Growing Better global report also suggests 10 critical transitions pyramid in transforming our food and land use system, with nutritious food and healthy diets as the main goal, supported by nature-based solutions, wider choice and supply, and opportunities for all. Transformation to our current food and health system, as also with the land use system, cannot be carried out in silos by each sector. Instead, a solid and intact partnership among various stakeholders is a must. Collaborative action with a systemic approach needs to be further enhanced through awareness raising, learning for science-based policy, and partnerships, both at the national and global level. It is my great hope that we will come out from this webinar with fresh ideas and inspirations for further study on better aligning food security with a more sustainable and equitable health environment. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nirarta, for the wonderful remark. We will move on to the opening remark by the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, Professor Ari Fahrial Syam, to officially launch this webinar. To Professor Ari, the time is yours.
Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Director of Nutrition and Maternal and Child Health, Minister of Health, Dr. Erna Wulati, Master of Science, and also Director for Food and Agriculture, National Department Planning Agency, Republic of Indonesia, Insinyur Anang Nugroho Setio Mulyono, Profesor Hegar, Profesor Mukhtaruddin, Dr. Nirarta Samadi, and also Dr. Dian Novita, all speakers, moderators, and all participants. Good afternoon. So I, Arif Fahri Alsam, the Dean of Health and Medicine, just Indonesia, would like to express my warmest welcome to all participants and also international speakers in this webinar. As others speakers mentioned before, that you know that Indonesia and other middle-income countries face a triple burden of malnutrition, with more than around 30% of Indonesian children under 5 years of age being stunted, while overweight and obesity, as well as the incidence of non-communicable diseases, have increased. To improve access to nutritious foods for all, especially those most vulnerable to malnutrition, food system transformation is essential, which requires the involvement of multi-stakeholders, including nutrition, health, agriculture, environment, economy, and also civil society. The transformations of food and land use systems become an urgent priority globally. It covers every factor in the ways land is used, and food is produced, stored, baked, processed, traded, distributed, marketed, consumed, and also disposed of. As one of the leading universities in Southeast Asia, Universitas Indonesia need to participate in supporting nutrition, health, and sustainability. Implementations as part of effort to solve nutrition problems in Indonesia. Hope so, during this webinar, experts in the field will share their insight to overcome this issue. Last but not least, I would like to give my highest appreciation for all the committee for organizing this event, and I would like also to convey my sincerest gratitude to all support, sponsorship, and also have made this event possible. Finally, I hope that this event will be successful and every participant will get a lot of benefit from this webinar. And I officially open this webinar. And back to MC, please. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Professor Ari, for the wonderful opening and also encouraging words. Next, we will have a photo session together. We would like to invite all speakers, guests, and moderator to turn on the camera. Also inviting the organizing committee to take the screenshot. Okay, we will give a cue. 3, 2, 1. Okay, once more. 3, 2, 1. Thank you so much, and feel free to turn off your camera if that is more comfortable for you. Thank you so much. Next, we will have the first keynote lecture from Director for Food and Agriculture, National Development Planning Agency of the Republic of Indonesia, Bapak Insinyur Anang Nugroho Setio Mulyono, with the title of Policy Planning and Implementation for Transformation of Sustainable Food System in Indonesia. Bapak Anang Nugroho has over 30 years of experience in public service. Since 2018, he has served as the Director for Food and Agriculture, Ministry of National Development Planning, and also National Chair for SDG 2 and Hunger. Bapak Anang holds Master of Engineering Management in Energy Management and Environmental Program from George Washington University, and Resource Economics Program from Georgetown University, and a Bachelor of Agriculture from Bogor Agriculture University, Indonesia. To Bapak Anang, the time is yours. Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. And share question regarding this. Since I'm been traveling and trying to corporate all the materials, and hopefully with this we don't have any technical.
Bapak Arnang, pardon, can remember your voice is a bit unclear.
Oh, okay. So could you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
That's great. Thank you, Pak Anang.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, I think I have to spell out again that again, thank you very much for having this session. I think this session is really important to us how we are having quite decent progress related with the transformation of the food systems currently doing in Indonesia. And I also would like to share the updated latest version of what we are doing, and hopefully could be referred. What the organizer asking to me for the topic today that I would like to share is related to the how it's policy planning and also the number of the system. I could start with the global level, that I do realize that we are all recognized what is the systems that could support on the global narrative to get the security. We are referring from the result from HSE 2017 that we are hello. Is it okay?
Yeah, perhaps the volume, Bapak Anang, maybe.
Hello.
Yeah, we can hear it, Pak Anang, but it seems the volume is
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
All right. So
thank you, Pak Anang. Yeah.
Okay. So for us in Indonesia, all of the development activities, I think it's also similar with other countries that we would like to reach what things that already been approved within the SDGs. For this food system topic, we are starting with the production activity, which is we do believe as a part of the agriculture activities. And it's not just only to have the productivity and production level, but also to reduce the poverty level and to boost the rural economy. I think those are two conventional topics are still matter at this moment. And we are trying to link it with the how we are coming with the sustainable agriculture production, which we are considering many this is not going to be negative impact on the farmers. I'm hoping this my voice is clear now. It's okay. Hello.
So clear, Pak Anang. Maybe can take out the headset, Pak Anang.
Headset. Oh.
Yeah, because it's not so clear.
Sorry to make. Did you hear me? Hello?
Ya, Pak Anang.
Hello again.
Yeah, Pak Anang, it's better, Pak Anang. Yeah.
All right. Oh, okay. So those we call it as an agri-food system, both bundling agriculture activity and also including the food sector as well, both all together. And we are expecting that those two activities could be kind of the engine for the rural development. We are expecting that the rural transformation happening on this part of the activity. So we're starting with the agricultural transformation. We are developing, we call it as a pathway for the food transformation, which is we are expecting to be more inclusive, collaborative, directed into the more healthy and sustainable food systems. I think it's almost similar with other countries that we are doing at this moment. And the focus for the area for the rural transformation, of course, we are concerned about how we are improving or increasing the income structure for the households and also providing more employment. We are realizing and monitoring how progress about the urbanization from the rural and then the urban life, urban areas, and then the changing of the linkages between rural and urban, which is now it's very quite clear, improving, and also how to make a link between the smallholders, farmers within the value chain, and also with the market access, and of course the new orientation for the agriculture now is a bit more on the nutritious sensitive, and for us in Indonesia, we are trying to have this to attacking the problem of triple burden nutrition, and the expecting impact on the outcomes of this, of course, as the SDG 2 mentioning, hunger reduction, food security, and other things. I think until the maintaining for the environmental sustainability and resource resilience, I think those are the outcomes that we are going to achieve. And back into the practice of Indonesia, we are referring that fortunately we are already having a food law, which is starting from the year of 2012, which is under this food law. It is very comprehensive food law, and we can differentiate or making a complementary for the activity, especially within the agriculture sector. And we are also putting there the topic of system transformation. So on this part, I think we have been to have the very comprehensive food law that we can operating, and this food law, and we are fortunately to have the presidential decree, which is required that all the sectors need to refer for the SDGs goal. And starting from the 2020, we are putting into our development planning and making this going to be very supportive on the perspective of the from our cabinet level, from national and subnational level, and we are keeping this hopefully throughout the plan, on the 5 years plan. We are hoping that we could have so-called more nutritious sensitive for our agriculture activity. So we are also renewing our action plan, which is previously maybe for some people it is a bit heavily more on the nutrition, but we are making a balance between the agri-food and nutrition going together. So next for this, I can report to you, then I can share to you that we are using a new process for the new theory or new process for our food system transformation that I can share you that we are starting with inviting all the multi-stakeholder participants to make this platform more wider and also more inclusive. We are also operating within the practice of making the open mind, open heart, and open will. Then starting from the downloading, expressing all the topics that all the challenges that all the participants may be faced, and starting throughout the process. And after we have common understanding among us, then we are crystallizing or prototyping what is the food system or the expecting condition that we can support more on the goals that previously expected, like more inclusive, healthy, sustainable, and resilient. So for this, next, the position now, our activities is starting, and we are quite very active with this process, either in the global and also regional and as well as international. And also the important one is we are putting down the activity going into the subnational and the local level. So I think from our assessment, now the position or the staging is we somehow put it in the stages of the crystallizing the prototype of the model that we would like to see further on the couple years more. Okay. And one more thing that I think is important that we in the future we are not having just only monoculture or in the production and in the agriculture production system, but we would like to have a more diversified, more local, and we call it this as regionalization of our food system, and also other issue that associated with this transformation. Thank you very much, and good luck to have this session. And again, I'll be expressing my appreciation to other partners from WFP, FAO, and as well as from University of Indonesia. Ibu Rina, thank you very much for having this. And terima kasih.
Thank you, Pak Anang.
Thank you, Bapak Anang, for your excellent lecture on food system transformation in Indonesia. We will move on to the next keynote lecture. We would like to invite Dr. Maria Endang Sumiwi, Master of Public Health, as the Director General of Public Health, Ministry of Health of the Republic of Indonesia, to share a keynote lecture with the title of Nutrition, Health and Sustainability, Current Policy and Program. Dr. Maria Endang will be represented by Dr. Erna Mulati, MSc, as the Director of Nutrition and Maternal and Child Health, Ministry of Health of the Republic of Indonesia. Dr. Maria Endang Sumiwi is the Director General of Public Health, who previously served as the health specialist in UNICEF Indonesia for more than 10 years. She also had experience working in Eijkman Institute for Molecular Biology and finished her medical education in Gadjah Mada University and holds a master in public health majoring in epidemiology from Umeå University, Sweden. Dr. Erna Mulati is the Director of Nutrition and Maternal and Child Health and has served in the Ministry of Health for 23 years. Previously, she worked at a primary healthcare center in Brebes, Central Java. She finished her medical education in Diponegoro University and holds a master in clinical medicine, family medicine from Philippine University in Philippines. To Dr. Erna, the time is yours.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Yang terhormat Ketua Pelaksana para pengurus Iluni UI yang terhormat, para pembicara, serta Bapak Ibu hadirin yang berbahagia. Marilah kita panjatkan puji dan syukur atas kehadiran Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, karena atas rahmat dan ridhonya kita dapat bersama-sama berkumpul dalam acara webinar yang sangat bagus ini. Pertama-tama perkenankan saya menyampaikan apresiasi sebesar-besarnya kepada Ketua Pelaksana. Saudara-saudara yang saya hormati, bila kita melihat situasi gizi saat ini, prevalensi masalah gizi mengalami perbaikan, ditandai dengan penurunan prevalensi stunting dan juga wasting. Namun demikian, terdapat kecenderungan peningkatan prevalensi obesitas pada penduduk usia dewasa, demikian pula pada penduduk dunia pada umumnya. Menurut data Global Nutrition Report tahun 2021, terjadi peningkatan jumlah overweight baik pada balita maupun pada kelompok dewasa. Sementara data SSGI tahun 2021 menunjukkan kelompok dewasa mengalami peningkatan prevalensi obesitas. Selanjutnya, untuk masalah kekurangan gizi, meskipun stunting mengalami penurunan prevalensi, data SGGI tahun 2021 menunjukkan masih jauh dari target yang diharapkan. Sehingga Indonesia masih harus berjuang mengatasi beban masalah gizi ganda atau yang biasa kita sebut dengan double burden malnutrition. Double burden masalah gizi termasuk obesitas merupakan arah dan indikator pada RPJMN tahun 2020-2024. Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, pola konsumsi masyarakat dunia menurut data Global Nutrition Report tahun 2021 menunjukkan bahwa pada tahun 2018 tidak ada satu wilayah pun di dunia yang sudah memenuhi rekomendasi mengkonsumsi makanan sehat dan membatasi makanan tidak sehat. Di Asia sendiri menunjukkan bahwa masyarakatnya masih kurang mengkonsumsi sayur dan buah, tetapi tinggi dalam konsumsi makanan olahan. Bila kita lihat dari pola konsumsi masyarakat Indonesia, dapat terlihat bahwa pola konsumsi makanan merupakan faktor risiko utama yang berkontribusi pada angka kematian dan kesakitan di Indonesia. Pemenuhan pola makan gizi seimbang dalam kehidupan sehari-hari merupakan solusi. Namun, berdasarkan data Susenas tahun 2019 dan survei konsumsi diet total tahun 2014 memperlihatkan bahwa konsumsi masyarakat Indonesia sebagian besar belum memenuhi gizi seimbang. Hampir setengah penduduk konsumsi kurang dari 70% angka kecukupan gizi. Sepertiga penduduk mengkonsumsi kurang 80% angka kecukupan protein. Konsumsi makanan masyarakat Indonesia didominasi oleh serealia. Konsumsi protein hewani, buah, dan sayur masih sangat rendah. Kondisi ini memperlihatkan bahwa pola konsumsi gizi seimbang belum menjadi bagian dalam kehidupan sehari-hari masyarakat. Saudara-saudara yang saya hormatin, sebagaimana dalam amanat RPJMN 2020-2024 yang terkait dengan program kesehatan ditujukan untuk meningkatkan sumber daya manusia yang berkualitas dan berdaya saing. Sektor kesehatan fokus untuk meningkatkan pelayanan kesehatan menuju cakupan kesehatan semesta dengan penekanan pada penguatan pelayanan kesehatan dasar atau primary healthcare dengan mendorong peningkatan upaya promotif dan preventif didukung oleh inovasi dan pemanfaatan teknologi. Strategi yang digunakan untuk mencapai hal tersebut adalah peningkatan kesehatan ibu, peningkatan kesehatan ibu, anak, dan KB, serta kesehatan reproduksi, percepatan perbaikan gizi, peningkatan pengendalian penyakit, pembudayaan perilaku hidup sehat melalui gerakan masyarakat hidup sehat, serta penguatan kesehatan dan pengawasan obat dan makanan. Masyarakat berfokus pada penurunan angka kematian ibu, angka kematian bayi, penurunan prevalensi stunting dan wasting pada balita, kemudian diikuti dengan indikator-indikator pendukung. Saudara-saudara yang saya hormatin, untuk mendukung kebijakan pembangunan peningkatan akses dan kualitas pelayanan kesehatan menuju cakupan kesehatan semesta, maka dilakukan penguatan pelayanan kesehatan atau primary healthcare. Peningkatan upaya promotif dan preventif serta didukung oleh inovasi dan pemanfaatan teknologi sehingga arah kebijakan bidang kesehatan difokuskan salah satunya melalui percepatan perbaikan gizi masyarakat. Upaya percepatan perbaikan gizi masyarakat untuk pencegahan dan penanggulangan permasalahan gizi, maka dilakukan beberapa strategi melalui percepatan penurunan stunting dengan peningkatan efektivitas intervensi spesifik, perluasan dan penajaman intervensi sensitif yang dilaksanakan secara terintegrasi. Yang kedua adalah peningkatan intervensi yang bersifat life saving dengan didukung oleh data yang adekuat, termasuk fortifikasi dan pemberian multiple mikronutrien. Dan yang ketiga adalah penguatan advokasi, komunikasi sosial, dan perbaikan perilaku hidup sehat, terutama mendorong pemenuhan gizi seimbang berbasis konsumsi pangan atau food-based approach. Dan yang keempat, penguatan sistem surveillance gizi. Dan yang kelima adalah peningkatan komitmen dan pendampingan bagi daerah dalam intervensi perbaikan gizi dengan strategi sesuai kondisi setempat dan respon cepat perbaikan gizi dalam kondisi darurat. Bapak, Ibu peserta webinar, pesan gizi seimbang merupakan panduan detail dalam kehidupan dalam memenuhi kecukupan gizi dan penerapannya dapat mencegah masalah gizi kurang dan gizi berlebih serta obesitas. Di dalamnya juga ditekankan perlunya penyediaan pangan sehat dan percepatan perbaikan gizi melalui gizi seimbang dan divisualisasikan dengan isi piringku untuk konsumsi harian. Ketika komunitas belajar lebih banyak tentang gizi yang baik, mereka akan membuat pilihan yang lebih sehat. 10 pesan gizi seimbang menyampaikan informasi penting untuk memenuhi kebutuhan harian Anda. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormatin, masalah gizi dapat dicegah. Kementerian Kesehatan melalui gerakan masyarakat hidup sehat bertujuan untuk mendorong seluruh komponen bangsa dengan kesadaran, kemauan, dan kemampuan berperilaku sehat untuk meningkatkan kualitas hidup. Menyadari pesan penting pangan dalam memberikan pemenuhan gizi masyarakat dalam upaya peningkatan kualitas generasi unggul. Diperlukan tindakan multisektor dan multilevel yang lebih luas, termasuk perubahan global yang substansial menuju pola diet yang sehat. Saya berharap melalui pertemuan ini dapat membawa dan menyampaikan pesan-pesan maupun gagasan yang mendidik, memberikan informatif, dan juga membantu memberikan informasi yang tepat tentang gizi seimbang dan penerjemahannya dalam isi piringku serta penguatan dukungan untuk konsumsi pangan yang bergizi. Akhir kata, sekali lagi kami menyampaikan selamat mengikuti webinar dan terima kasih baik kepada panitia maupun seluruh peserta. Demikian yang dapat kami sampaikan. Selamat mengikuti acara webinar ini. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you so much, Dr. Erna, and also Dr. Endang for the insightful lecture on the current situation, policy, and program in Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now start with the main event. To lead this session, I would like to invite Dr. Helda Kusun as the moderator of this session. Yeah, Dr. Helda is a member of Master of Nutrition Study Program Alumni Association or ILUNI. She is one of the experts in Siameo Rekfon and has been participating in various research and projects for 25 years. She is currently serving as the coordinator for the School-Based Nutrition Promotion Working Group and the head of Community Nutrition Major in Nutrition Study Program, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia. She earned her PhD in Nutrition from University of Queensland, Australia. To Dr. Helda, the time is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dafrina, for the very kind introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, everyone, for all the participants in Indonesia, and for those who are joining from other continent. Good morning or good night, even for Scarlett. It is very early morning there, probably, and also for Saskia. Also, this time is morning. Yeah, good morning to you, both of you. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we have been hearing from the two keynote lectures, the problems that we are facing, yeah, the triple burden of malnutrition, and then also the food system transformation that has been planned by the government. Yeah, we also understand that currently dietary changes and transition, which is occurring at the pace which never happened before, really influencing not only the health of the population, but also at the same time, this shift also placing an increased pressure toward the environment, and then also rapidly increasing risks for land use change and climate change. We see there is effort ongoing in both health and agriculture sector, but how is both sector can be connected? So our webinar today is actually intended to share the current evidence and information update on lesson learned regarding the relationship of nutrition, health, and agriculture production, especially sustainable production, and then also what is the research needs and the approach that can be taken for promotive and preventive healthcare in the community. Today we will have 3 speakers. Alhamdulillah, all the 3 speakers already joined us in this afternoon. And then each of the speaker will highlight important aspects regarding sustainable diet and how it affects health of the people and the planet. Before we continue on the presentation, let me inform you first how the webinar will be conducted. So we will give time for each speaker, 20 minutes each to give their presentation. So after hearing all the 3 presentations, we will move on to the question and answer as well as discussion session. We would not take question directly orally, but you could post your question on the question and answer button, on the question and answer platform, the button there. You can click on the button and then write down your question in the question and answer section of this Zoom webinar. So the committee will pick up some of the question. I'm sure there will be many questions. Yeah, the committee will pick up the question and then we will share the screen and then direct the question towards the speaker. When you post your question, kindly mention your name, institution, and then to whom you would like to direct the question to. Okay, everyone. So let's invite the first speaker. The first speaker will be Dr. Rina Agustina. Dr. Rina will present about the research needs for sustainable diet. Yeah. Dr. Rina is currently a lecturer at the Department of Nutrition, Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia. And also, she is currently the head of Human Nutrition Research Center, HNRC, at IMERI Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia. She has involvement in various commissions. Among others is the Eat Lancet Commission for Healthy Diet and Sustainable Food System, and also an ambassador for Food and Land Use Coalition. She's currently a member of the Technical Advisory Group for New York Academy of Science, and also Vice President of Indonesian Medical Nutrition Association, or PDGMI. Her research interest covers maternal, child, and adolescent nutrition, gut microbiota, micronutrients, and sustainable diet. She received numerous grants for her research, and she is also the lead author for the Lancet paper on universal health coverage in Indonesia. Quite a seminal paper, I must say. Dr. Rina is a medical doctor by training. She graduated from Gadjah Mada University and holds Master of Science in Nutrition from Universitas Indonesia. And she received her PhD from Human Nutrition, PhD in Human Nutrition from Wageningen University, the Netherlands. So Dr. Rina, without further ado, I would like to invite you to start your presentation. The screen is yours now.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Helga, for your kind introduction. Really happy to be here. Thank you very much for organizing committee. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning and good evening for the rest of the world. Okay, let me share my screen now. And I would like to discuss about the planetary healthy diet for better future of health and Earth, what research needs. Here, I would like to talk a little bit more on the report of the Lancet Commission, and of course, also some of the study related to research that we actually need to develop and in the context of global as well as Indonesia. Okay, the world is growing and the planet is limited, and that we are having a challenge how to feed 9.5 billion people a healthy and sustainable diet within planetary boundary. And this is where the Eat Lancet Commission on Healthy Diet for a Sustainable Food System, chaired by Walter Willett and Johan Rockström, released the publication on the Lancet, which is quite influential report. This is the first time where the Commission scientifically assess whether there's a possibility to do the global transformation in food system to deliver healthy and sustainable food system in this growing world population, and how this actually then in line with attaining of the Sustainable Development Goal in 2030, and also the goal of the Paris Climate Agreement in 2050. So this is really in line with the really timely with our big challenge. We are now facing two major challenges of our time. We are having malnutrition, or its form is mentioned by the previous speakers, especially on triple burden of malnutrition in Indonesia, for example. And this same pattern, increase of obesity and non-communicable disease, and also persistent of undernutrition, we are also facing the same pattern of increasing carbon dioxide and agriculture pressure. We came into the situation where food system is really a large force, where we are in the end of the Anthropocene. As a human, we are actually continue to the largest force of the changes of the planet Earth and also the health, and where food is a really single strongest contribution that is escalating the environment pressure, and therefore here the Eat Lancet Commission need to take a Earth system to approach to define the sustainable food system. And both the happening of malnutrition and the degradation of environment happening at accelerated phase. So then when we talk about diet, it has to be co-benefit between health and environment. However, what we found in the population, there's a population with a loss diet or unhealthy and sustainable diet, and some part with a loss-win diet and healthy, although a sustainable diet, and win-loss diet, healthy but unsustainable diet. And what the purpose of the Eat-Lancet Commission to have win-win diet and healthy and sustainable diet. So, but what we see from many of the region in the world, as well as what we face in Indonesia, for example, this is a compilation of the study that we have done at Human Nutrition Research Center at Faculty of Medicine Indonesia, looking at what kind of dietary quality that's happening now. And when we look at all the regions from Indonesia, Minangkabau, Sundanese, Sulawesi, Jakarta, Banten, and also many other parts of the population with many different population. When we assess the dietary quality assessment using the many different index, we found the low quality diet, which actually not even reaching 50 out of 100. And this actually giving the potential of the shifting transition of the diet from the traditional healthy diet to the westernized diet. So we have to care all about this. So for this, it's happening, like mentioned by Dr. Erna, it's happening all over the world. So what solution should be done? So Eat-Lancet Commission proposed the three major approach. The first one is the dietary shift. It has to be a dietary shift, which goes later from the planetary healthy diet, which can, in a modeling system, can reduce about 49% or 96% point of the gas emission, combined also with the health waste by 50%, which in line with SDG, and improve production practice high level, and altogether can reach more than 100% point of the improvement of the reduction of gas emission, as well as also giving the later of the health benefits. And here, what the solution proposed in conjunction with planetary healthy diet. Here, the planetary healthy diet, where the dietary pattern really characterized with variety of high quality plant-based foods and low amount of animal-based food, refined grain, added sugar, reduce the refined grain, added sugar, and unhealthy fat. At the same time, also giving a flexibility to accommodate this to the local context, this individual context, the tradition, dietary preference, and so on. And this giving 50% of our food should come from fruit and vegetable, and the 50% of the energy contribution should come from the carbohydrates, food and fat, dairy, protein around 50%, and increasing amount of plant source protein in addition to a lower amount or modest amount of the animal source protein. So again, then if we want to do the practice, then what should be done then? Eat variety of foods, mostly plants, more fruit and vegetable, legumes, whole grain, limit red meat, and really try to cook at home, real food, less processed food, and eat just enough. And so should really mind on portion size and waste none. So this should be a very simple message to really overcome the potential healthy diet. From the modeling point of view, with different kind of approach, it comes into the potential benefit of reducing about 20% of the premature mortality, of 11 million of the all count deaths, if all actually follow the planetary healthy diet. However, current diet differs greatly from Eat-Lancet target. So if you look at the line orange there, those should be emphasized, like nuts, for example, or legumes, whole grain, are those who are not eating well. So those who should be limited, red meat, for example, those are abundant consumption, especially in the Northern America and many Western countries, the rich countries. So what happened with some of the low and middle income countries, they are also limited still. In Indonesia, for example, very low consumption of meat, red meat, and highly carbohydrates, especially the rice. So this is how the planetary healthy diet in global, and this is all put together. We can also put how Indonesian, which math, this is from a lot of region, for example. And we are Indonesian here, very much with a lot of Nusantara food, a lot of kind of food which actually can be locally produced and also can be taken from the culture point of view. And if we compare our planetary healthy diet, for example, with now the eating isi piringku, then the question, is there anything that we have to shift? If you look at here, the principal variety of food is the same. The volume of the fruit and vegetable, 50% of the volume of our eating is the same. So what should be shift? If you look at here, it's a very nice picture taken by Switch Asia and HIFOS and show that maybe we can look at the rice here need to be put more whole grain. So, and more plant source protein, put it there. So, and then a variety of other fruit and vegetable. And of course, this will have the potential also the other side dish on this protein of animal, as well as also the tempe tahu and all these kind of things. So what should be shift? If you look at here, for example, this is a model. If you put, this is just like what we eat every day, actually. Maybe we can shift the rice to more staple food, variety of staple food, beras merah, black rice, or many other things that are available in Indonesia. Maybe we can put more the nuts and legumes, kacang-kacangan here, for example, and the tropical fruits. And all this can be actually matched with what actually has been done for the planetary healthy diet. And then now the question, is it realistic to have it all in the over the world? This is very ambitious, and we'll see what kind of potential research that needs to be taken. So I would like to see some of the publication that actually make a kind of critical comparison with planetary healthy diet and what kind of research opportunity in developing countries and low middle income countries, which evidence are still lacking and need to be more scientific publication to the policy recommendation. So first one, of course, then there's a need for research in low middle income countries by local expert. Case study, lesson learned need to be compiled from, because why? Because most significantly weakness of the research and food security, food system is actually because it's a muted voice of a low middle income country researcher. Yeah, this is mentioned by Franzo in 2020, and she mentioned actually many evidence facing poorer parts of the world even come from researchers from high-income countries, and also from the work of institutions from high-income donor. So what should be done by researchers in low-income countries like me, by others are attending here? Let's see, can we respond to the field of the equity gaps in the case of food system transformation? We need to study that. Can we use the food system dashboard for decision making and choosing research topic on food system? Can we focus to really put the message simple and understandable, the research which can be understood by wider beneficiary? And of course, there should be less bias on publication where the accessible journal should be coming for the low middle income country researcher. The next one, then the question, is it affordable or not? I understand that Dr. Saskia will talk more about this one. So there's a nice review done by Hinopen showing that, yes, this is improved diet and affordable in many countries, especially in high-income countries. But about 1.6 billion people in middle-income countries and low-middle-income countries, especially Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, are not reaching that. Yeah. So if they are going to have healthy and sustainable diet, it should combine having higher income, improved income, nutritional assistance, and lower price. And this, of course, will have involved the policy reform and transformation of the policy into the food system. So the cause of healthier food are needed to inform the both intervention and systemic changes need to be studied more. And here we can look at the more the low middle income countries, the more the percentage of the high cost of the high and sustainable diet should be beared from the point of view. And we're looking here about $3 a day need to be paid for the healthy and sustainable diet. Of course, this raised the concern, can we afford that? And who will finance this transformation? And this is in line with the Springman and et al., who actually managed to see that the need to reduce the food waste and future socioeconomic changes to increase the relative affordability. And the modeling, it's possible later until 2050 if we can combine this intervention. So the potential research, we have to have the study to really direct it, the increase of income of our population to really spend to healthier food choice rather than westernized diet pattern, which is growing right now and everywhere. And as we need to do the estimation of diet cost of Eat Lancet reference diet using Indonesian price and the scenario combination half food waste, increased income, combined together also with social safety net, and whether this is actually feasible. So the other point, which is very important, when we look at the planetary healthy diet or isi piringku that Indonesian have, 50% has to derive from fruit and vegetable. This is a very important aspect. We're showing that increasing fruit and vegetable consumption is an important component of shift toward healthier, more sustainable diet. But what is reported by Mason de Cross, progress has not been observed equally across all regions and many countries. So there's insufficient availability. The availability as a supply are the major problem of this one. And of course that this is not taking into account the intra variability, like for Western Indonesia, from the west to the east, there will be so much of the different typology. And I understand will be also delivered by Saskia on this part. So then there's a gap between fruit vegetable production, demand, and also recommended consumption. If we look at from that particular modeling, and then we take into a consideration ratio of Indonesian food and vegetable availability, even under the most optimal socioeconomic scenario, we can only achieve sufficiently if increasing GDP up to 10 times from the current nominal. Progression of food and vegetable availability, of course, can improve gradually, but not sufficient to feed all the people. So need a research to really see the provision of information, like for example, how we can really give the message of the quantified food-based dietary guideline on food, vegetable, really clear what is the portion, what is the message should be done there, and should target the policy on the consumption side in such a price subsidy, as well as the increased production will probably require also prioritization of investment in research, food and vegetable production, and also the public policy targeting consumer behavior. And then we will, because the essence is to reduce the animal source to increase plant-based diet, but not all plant-based diet are equal, created equal. So the most important is really to have healthy plant-based food. Yeah, so cardiovascular benefit can be achieved, even a modest reduction in animal food, but with increasing of healthy plant boosts. So this is lacking evidence in developed countries. So needs to be more research toward this. So then the question, shall we actually change our dietary guidelines to really match with the healthy and sustainable diet? So some countries are approaching this. For example, this is a study done in the Netherlands looking at can they shift healthy and sustainable diet on their food-based dietary guidelines? But then when they construct all the modeling and see the balance, the weighting between reducing gas emission and also increasing nutritional adequate, here they found that they choose the nutritional adequate. So this is, of course, country by country will be different, and Indonesia should then looking at possibility to also revisit the current Indonesian dietary guidelines to see the optimization from several objective functions, especially to cover environmental impact purpose, still maintaining the healthy diet for the vulnerable groups and also for many other different wider population. And the proposed several diet scenario that conformance with Indonesian characteristics should be also need to be assessed maybe with linear programming and in accordance with the age, gender, geographical condition, affordability, and so on. And of course, the last is about innovation. This innovation can accelerate the transition toward the sustainable food system. There's 8 components that need to be adopted if we do transformation of sustainable food system. Like, for example, here, the potential to have ensuring the stable finance, the designing market incentive, and so on. So all this actually put together with innovation and technology. And this is one of the example constructed by Anurag Shankar, 2020, how the rapid transformation platform of food system can be done, like to have digital platform to ensure food production driven by demands, health, sustainability, and economy. And this can be done through that digital platform. At the same time, how the food consumption driven by health, preference, availability, and the cost. And that's where our center, Human Nutrition Research Center, we involve in several movement here right now on food system, healthy diet. One of the policy brief that we involve with the Chatham House, where we actually looking at the healthy sustainable diet for Indonesian context. And we also developed the its application to cover food intake and calculating gas emission. We improve more and more, and this is already launched in a Google Store. And we also publish several, now several papers is going to coming up on our. So we want to together lead the low middle income countries also leading center for this particular aspect. So last not least, this is what we actually propose in our paper on Lancet Universal Health Coverage. The all the food system need also be connected to universal health coverage, where we are actually goes beyond that for the universal risk coverage and universal cost coverage, which involves the food system, where the promotive preventive action should take a lead more than the curative action for Indonesian strategy. So then, of course, to go to that direction, the consumer attitude toward environmental concern need to be assessed, to the meat consumption, to the plant source consumption, need the capability, opportunity, behavior, and motivation with many different study design, with many different respondent characteristic theoretical framework, and also making sustainable food consumption as the top mind and lifestyle of Indonesian people, with massive promotion and also concept of diverse health foods. Yeah. So last but not least, in our policy brief on the Chatham House, we would like to propose a transformation of a system with entry points on reduction of sugar intake, with aligning high-level policy, with mainstreaming the principle of a healthy diet, and partnering with food and provider and local partner. I believe, and we all believe, there's an opportunity, there's time now for Indonesia to lead, to the low middle income countries also to lead. Why? Because we are one of the country, together with China, actually have a current consumption pattern aligned with the model necessary to protect health and the planet, maintaining the current patterns, shifting all, and we can lead the G20 countries as a critical protecting the planet and the people. But of course, there's a lot of homework need to be done to really improve the situation on the food policy, and essential first step to promote healthy eating habits in the country, to educational program and public awareness campaign. So I believe, we all believe Indonesia with the G20 leadership in Bali this year will create the healthy food for humanity, and will lead the shifting diet more ambitious for national dietary guidelines, and also environmental benefit and reduce risk of future pandemic. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dr. Rina, very interesting presentation indeed. about the sustainable healthy diet. Yeah, Dr. Rina has explained to us that we are facing concurring challenges in nutrition, environment, and agriculture, and then apparently food is the center of it. And then also the competition between in sustainable in diet, whether we between health versus the earth, yeah, whether it is lose-lose, win-lose, or win-win, which one we want to take is also explained by Dr. Rina. Yeah. And Dr. Rina also mentioned that actually planetary healthy diets were similar to the already given food-based dietary guidelines in many countries, including in Indonesia. There are some shifts that needs to be taken, like increasing more whole grain in the recommendation and shifting the animal protein towards more plant protein. And Dr. Rina also highlight that the potential research needs for lower income countries, actually the majority is to voice the research itself, to compile all the research and publish the research. Yeah, and then also some Dr. Rina has highlighted some potential research needs for lower middle income countries. I'm not going to outline one by one again. Okay, so thank you so much, Dr. Rina. We will move to the second speaker. Yeah, we have already with us Miss Scarlett Benson. Good, very early morning for you, probably, Scarlett. Yeah. Scarlett is now the co-director of the Knowledge Generation work stream of the Food and Land Use Coalition within Systemic. Scarlett was also author the report published by FOLU entitled Growing Better, the 10 Critical Transition to Transform Food and Land Use. Prior to joining Systemic, Scarlett lead the climate risk decision of a consultancy firm and working with large multinational corporations to quantify their greenhouse gas emission, climate risk and opportunities, as well as to set science-based targets. Ms. Scarlett Benson has a degree in human sciences from the University of Oxford and an MSc in environmental technology, majoring in ecological management. So without further ado, I would like to invite Scarlett to deliver her presentation. Scarlett, the screen is yours now.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you, and it's been amazing to hear all the presentations today. I'm just going to share my screen. So if you just give me a moment to fiddle with that. Hold on. Sorry, these things, I always have many screens up. Here we go. Can everybody see that?
Yes, yes, we can clearly see the screen now.
Great. So yeah, so as I said, I work for the Food and Land Use Coalition, which is a coalition of 9 different organizations, one of which is Systemic, where I am based. It's been in existence since 2017, and we have a sort of a global team that leads global research, which is the team which I lead, and then we have the country platforms that do all of the fantastic work in countries, including the Indonesia team. So very happy to be kind of representing the global secretariat of the coalition. So I'll just start with the sort of the big picture, and this is all content that's really drawn from the Growing Better report, which was mentioned before, which is one of FOLU's sort of flagship pieces. So, you know, I think when we're thinking about how food systems are performing and we're thinking about the kind of the health implications and the environmental implications, we do have to obviously remember that actually the food system has performed very well in the way that we designed it. So we've had food supply outgrowing population. We've had huge increases in yield, and food prices have over time been reducing in real terms, notwithstanding, of course, the current food price crisis. But we're still, when we look at a longer term, seeing downward trends. And of course, similarly, undernutrition has also declined. But whilst we're seeing all of these, very kind of amazing improvements in the agricultural system, we're also, of course, having huge issues and declines in other realms when it comes to things like environment and health, etc. So, as you can see on the right-hand side of the screen, just a few quite shocking stats around kind of 2 billion people being overweight or obese, women, which is about 43% of the agricultural workforce, but receiving about 5% of the extension services, 80% of large marine ecosystems subject to significant eutrophication. So in essence, yes, we have achieved essentially what we were trying to set out when we designed the food systems for productivity and yield and food security. But actually we're having huge kind of implications in terms of the social and the environmental costs as a result. And I think it was mentioned earlier in one of the kind of initial presentations or welcoming speeches, but one of the things that the Food and Land Use Coalition tried to do was present these negative impacts of the food system in terms of hidden costs. And these are essentially externalities, whether they be externalities that are like incurred by other parts of society. So for example, in the case of some of the health externalities, they are incurred by the medical system in terms of paying for the costs of people having heart attacks or like other dietary related diseases, or potentially felt by the wider society. So in the case of things like greenhouse gas emissions, the externalities are the result of sort of increased extreme weather events, also kind of chronic climate impacts that affect GDP and our ability to survive. So what you can see on the left-hand side is the market value of the global food system. That number, 10 trillion, is a kind of average of many estimates that we found, but it's sort of in orders of magnitude correct. And then what you have as we move through the waterfall diagram is the costs, the hidden costs, i.e. the externalities from health, from environment, and from kind of economic related losses. For me, I'm an environmentalist. That's my background. Health is not my health and nutrition is not my area of specialism. But this graph to me was very powerful because I think we've been trying to create a case for action for many, many decades based on environmental reasons alone. And I think what this really tells us is that, the size of the bucket of health, the costs to society associated with the health impacts of the food system are huge, clearly an order of magnitude larger than the other costs. And therefore, how do we use health as a lens, a critical lens to achieve outcomes that we want for environment and for inclusive development as well? So very, very interesting. And one thing I would also state, which is that the health costs that you can see there, so obesity and undernutrition actually specifically, they are to do with disability adjusted life years. They're called DALYs. It's a measure. I'm sure many of you know what that means. But that does not include is the direct cost to health systems associated with these diseases. So this is actually in many ways a huge underestimate of the actual cost to the health as associated with the food system and health related impacts. So the Growing Better report, which, as I said before, I think someone mentioned it earlier, tries to frame these hidden costs and then develop a reform agenda, but it's very much framed as a global reform agenda, recognizing that in any one country, there are different aspects of this that matter more and that are more relevant. So I'm going to talk more from a kind of global perspective, and of course, as I say, that this can be adapted and sort of nuanced to any country situation. But the aim of what we were trying to do with the Growing Better report and all of the modelling that we did that underpinned this was to deliver on these 4 outcomes that you can see on the left. So the first was to achieve a better environment, one that is carbon neutral, is contributing to 1/3 of the climate mitigation for 1.5 degrees, halting biodiversity loss, restoring ocean fish stocks, etc. The second was around health, so providing sufficient nutritious food. The human and planetary health diet was presented earlier, so it was very much based on that diet that we've heard about today, eliminating undernutrition and halving the disease burden associated with overconsumption. The third is around inclusive development, so boosting income growth for the bottom 20% of the rural population, increasing yields for smallholders, etc. And then obviously, very, very importantly, food and nutritional security. So stabilizing or potentially even lowering real food prices and supplying sufficient food of the right quality and quantity to the poorest and most vulnerable. So those are the outcomes that we were trying to achieve. And the report had quite a significant modelling component that underpinned it. So we worked with IASA, which is the International Institute of Applied Systems Analysis, and they did their sort of spatial modelling to understand how different crops could be produced at different times. We had essentially 2 scenarios, so a current trend scenario where we sort of continue as usual, and a better future scenario. On top of that, there was also modelling that we worked with on the World Bank around poverty, and we also worked with the University of Santa Barbara on ocean modelling, and also with the University of Washington on the health modelling. So it was an interesting exercise because actually there were no models that were truly fit for purpose that could actually integrate all of these different elements, and so we had to combine them. And whilst it wasn't perfect, it did give us a very good sort of understanding of the trade-offs between some of these different things. And actually, there weren't trade-offs. In fact, there were linkages. So what we were modelling essentially is described in this 10 critical transitions. So this is our reform agenda for how we see food systems being transformed over the coming decades. And I think, you can see in the pyramid that there are many aspects to this, from healthy diets, and the second row is very much focused on nature. The third row is about kind of efficiency and choice and sort of consumers. And then the bottom row is about sort of stronger rural livelihoods, kind of empowering people to achieve the transition. So I think what I would just like to dwell on is the fact that healthy diets is at the top of the pyramid. And really the reason for this is because it's impossible to achieve any of the other outcomes unless we shift diets, as we've heard today. So we really view healthy diets as the lens through which we can shift other parts of the system. And I'll come more to the healthy diets in a moment. Again, like this is my favorite graph from the report, and I think it just really captures like the scale of the challenge that we have ahead of us, because how we use land basically sits at the heart of all of this. So on the left-hand side, you can see how we're using land today, and the different bars represent either cropland, pasture land, ecosystems, etc. What you can see is on the 2 right-hand side bar graphs is 2050 under a current trend scenario where we essentially do nothing, we continue along as business as usual, versus better futures where we implement the reform agenda that I just described. And essentially what we can see is that in better futures, to achieve all of those 4 outcomes that I described related to environment, health and inclusion, and kind of economic development, we have to restore it's actually 1.2 billion hectares of agricultural land that exists today to nature, 1.2 billion hectares of land. And that's pretty much the size of Europe. So what we really need to achieve to deliver on all these kind of environmental outcomes, to avoid the food system becoming so undermined by climate change is a massive change in agriculture. We need to increase yields substantially. We need to avoid deforesting any further land, and we need to put much more land into restoration. And the only way, you know, obviously increasing productivity is a critical part of this, but of course we also need to increase productivity at the same time as in certain places reducing fertilizer use, because we know that fertilizers are leading to many kind of other environmental impacts. So it's a huge challenge, and dietary shift really is the key to a lot of this. So we're not talking about eating a purely vegetarian or vegan diet, but in certain countries, particularly my own country, people are over-consuming meat in a way that really is not sustainable. And, you know, many argue that potentially also isn't healthy either. So reducing meat consumptions in places like the UK in the order of about 60% is what we really need to achieve to deliver on this better future. And I've emphasized, as has been emphasized by other speakers, that this is a very country-specific thing. And there are countries, of course, in the world that do need to, from a kind of health perspective, where we have instances of anemia, etc., where meat consumption does actually need to increase. But there are many countries, as I say, like my own, where meat consumption is far too high from an environmental perspective. I'll sort of gloss over the slide actually, but I just wanted to highlight that the report does not only do that kind of sort of geospatial modeling, but we also did some economic analysis. The graph that I presented earlier with the hidden costs, we also looked at what the hidden costs would do over time. So if you implemented this better future versus the current trends, and that's what we refer to, the kind of difference between current trends and better futures hidden costs, as the economic prize, and it's about 5.7 trillion by 2030. We also calculated the investment requirements associated with the different transitions, both investment that's required by private sector and also the public sector, and then finally the business opportunities. We looked at kind of across all of these transitions, what were the things for a business that would present an opportunity, either through kind of new markets or through you know, alternative resource allocation as a result of cost savings. So just to mention as well, so that paper was released in 2019, and since then we've published a number of papers, but one that I wanted to highlight was one that we did on positive tipping points with the University of Exeter. And there were two papers, one that was published through FOLU, and then one that was published on the Cambridge University Press, which is longer and kind of more academic. And this was all about how do we create a shift in the system. So the reform agenda that I described is incredibly complex in many ways. You know, changing land use of 1.2 billion hectares, it's a huge challenge. And many people, including myself, feel quite overwhelmed by the scale of what we have to do. So we wanted to write this paper about, you know, what are the sort of the things that you can, how do you target your action in a way that allows change to happen much more easily. And the concept here is about tipping points. So I think some people on this call might know the concept of tipping points from an ecological perspective. We hear about bad tipping points all the time, the Amazon rainforest becoming so, or the temperature becoming so high that the Amazon rainforest dries out and all world food production is put at risk. That's of course a bad tipping point, but we also have social tipping points that can be designed in a way that leads to positive change. So the sort of definition is a small perturbation that can trigger kind of an outsized impact in the system and changing that system to a different state. So I just wanted to highlight, so we created this framework for how do you as an actor within the system create a positive tipping point. And the key thing is that you have to start with a goal or a vision. So where do you want the system to go? You then need to think about, and I know this is strange that I'm presenting this slide from perhaps right to left, but it's more logical to do it in that way. So you start with the goal, and then you think about really what are the barriers to systemic change from happening. And we've set out these 5 conditions for systemic tipping points, which are essentially the kind of the mirror of those barriers. So if something is cheap enough, price is low enough, then that proposed solution will be more attractive than existing ones. If it outperforms, so it's better, you know, if we're thinking about something like electric cars, if the electric car is better to drive than the other one, then you might want to drive it more likely, you'd be more likely to buy it. If it's accessible, so you can buy it easily, you know, in the UK, we have a soup, I don't know if you have it in Indonesia, called Whole Foods. It's very expensive and there's very few of them. And so, yes, you can buy amazing vegan foods, but is it in your local supermarket? Like, is it accessible? Cultural and social norms. So do your friends, do your family, do your social networks encourage the use of that alternative? And then finally, capability. So do you have the right information or kind of ability to act on that behavior? I myself, I'm a vegetarian and still have a pan. So that's what I mean by capability. Are you able to kind of produce food in that certain way? And you have these reinforcing feedback loops that really enable these things to happen very quickly. And I'll just give one example, which is that if you're a policymaker and you decide to invest a lot of R&D into an alternative protein or a different form of lower meat consumption food, your R&D would essentially bring down the cost of that alternative, and that would trigger kind of an economy of scale, which would then unlock some of these barriers. So what we're looking for in this framework is ways that we can trigger these reinforcing feedback loops through targeted intervention that will unlock these barriers that I described. Again, we'll mention this quite quickly, but we applied this framework to how to move away from meat-rich diets towards plant-rich diets in Europe, and we looked at how, like, you know, how far Europe is in terms of achieving that transition, and what we thought were the key interventions that needed to happen to make that occur. And it was from a policymaker perspective. I'm very focused on like the order in which you time interventions. So this slide here, I know it's a bit complicated to look at, but I'm happy to share the slides afterwards. But the upwards curve of the graph basically describes an increase in percentage of adoption of the human and planetary health diet. And the later part of the graph shows like a very quick uptick, because you at 2030 theoretically would reach this tipping point. And what we describe is how does one as a policymaker like sequence any interventions to kind of unlock these barriers that I described and essentially trigger these kind of enabling conditions related to performance, price, convenience, cultural norms, and capability. So conscious of time, I just wanted to like find it, because I'm very aware, obviously nutrition is the central theme of what we're talking about today, but as I mentioned, healthy diets are at the top of the pyramid, the Food and Land Use Coalition's pyramid. And what we describe as healthy diets, just to be clear, is diets converging on local variations of the human and planetary health diet, which is a predominantly plant-based diet, which includes more protective foods, a diverse protein supply, and reduced consumption of sugar, salt, and highly processed foods. And I think what we were very keen to emphasize was that consumers would enjoy a broader range of high quality, nutritious, affordable foods. What is really critical in this transition is that it's not perceived that we are restricting choice. Obviously, reducing meat consumption is a very complex topic, but actually, you know, as I said, I myself am a vegetarian and have, you know, since being vegetarian or since being vegan, which I struggle with because I love cheese, but it makes me appreciate food in a very different way. I see a raised hand. I'm just wondering if that's time, or is that a question? Is that time?
Yes, the time is.
Yeah. I'll wrap up.
Okay.
So I'll skip over that slide because it's very much about kind of the benefits of a healthy diet, which I think we've all had very clearly articulated. But just to sort of clarify, so in the Growing Better report, when we talk about these 10 critical transitions, we try and describe the goal of the system. We talk about what the barriers are. So why are like healthy and sustainable diets difficult in society? And I mean, a huge part of it is that we have so much money going in the other direction. So we have companies advertising for unhealthy, unsustainable foods in an order of magnitude that's just hundreds of times larger than any money from the public sector aimed at trying to encourage healthy diets. So we explore those barriers, and then we call out a set of actions for government, for business, for civil society, for research, for academia. And I've just highlighted just 2 of these on the slide today, which is that governments can establish and promote the planetary and human health dietary standards. They can repurpose subsidies, they can target procurement of public food, etc. And then businesses have a very, very significant role in kind of redirecting their advertising and marketing spend, in sort of redesigning product portfolios, etc. So I really hope that that has been a insightful presentation, and that you'll be encouraged to have a look at the Growing Better report and look at what we've done on healthy diets. But thank you very much. Huge privilege to have been able to speak today. So thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Scarlett, for the very insightful presentation. Scarlett mentioned to us that actually the food system has performed very well as it was initially designed. But as a result of that, which is it's designed for productivity and yield in the very first place. But as a result of that, there is hidden costs from where we have more pressure toward the environment and hidden costs on the health. Yeah, that's why a reform of food system transformation is needed. And Scarlett has mentioned about the reform. Explain about the reform, what reform is needed, and then apparently how we use land is actually the key to the food system transformation, and the investment needed for this food system transformation actually much less than the cost, the hidden cost, which is trillions hidden cost toward the environment and the health status. So, and it's very important, interesting also the concept of tipping point. Probably some of you would like to ask more about the concept of tipping point later on. So thank you so much again, Scarlett, for the presentation. So the last speaker, so last but really not least, really not least. So I would like to welcome to Dr. Saskia Depe. I have heard about Saskia for long. Saskia has been in Indonesia on and off, I think, yes, Saskia. And then also Saskia is currently the Senior Technical Advisor for Nutrition at the United Nations World Food Programme, where she leads the system analysis for nutrition team. However, prior to joining World Food Programme in 2007, Saskia worked for Helen Keller International in the Asia Pacific region for 10 years, where Indonesia is among the countries where she works. Moreover, Dr. Saskia also did her PhD research in Indonesia, in Lewiliang to be exact, in West Java in the early 1990s, supervised by the late Dr. Muhilal at Pusli Panggisi and Dr. Clive Watts at Wageningen University. All of them are our teachers, actually. And then currently, Saskia is also adjunct associate professor at the Friedman School of Nutrition Science and Policy, Tufts University, Boston, and at the Human Nutrition Wageningen University, the Netherlands. Okay, so with her impressive work experience, let's hear her presentation on the topic. She would present to us on the opportunity and challenges in transforming the Indonesia's food system to eliminate malnutrition. So, Dr. Saskia, the time and the screen is yours now.
Thank you so much, Helda, and good afternoon, good morning, everyone. Really a pleasure to be here with you in this webinar today. And yeah, also thank you so much for these other presentations, really, really insightful. I'm going to build on those by taking a deeper look at the Indonesian food system and how that can be transformed. And so I'm sharing my screen. So what I'll basically do is present findings from the Fill the Nutrient Gap situation analysis in Indonesia that we just completed with Bappenas and many stakeholders in country. And also findings from a paper that we've just published together with Prof. Hardinsyah, Prof. Jalal, and other colleagues also from the Center for Livable Future at Johns Hopkins University. So basically, we want to transform the food system to deliver healthy, nutritious, safe, and affordable diets from sustainable food systems. And for that, we need country-specific trajectories of change. We've heard very clearly where we want to arrive, and Dr. Rina showed very nicely what that would mean in terms of a diet on the plate in Indonesia. So I'll take us through those questions outlined here. So what is the health and nutrition situation? What should the diet get to and from where, considering that? How are the current diets unhealthy and are healthy diets affordable? What's the environmental footprint of the diet? And then how do we set targets for the longer term? So stunting, as we've seen, is declining in Indonesia, but it's still quite high. And there's a lot of regional variation. And of course, the government has a major focus on reducing stunting. Also, overweight and obesity are high. So basically, we're dealing with a triple burden of malnutrition. Undernutrition, stunting and wasting, overweight and obesity, non-communicable diseases, and micronutrient deficiencies. So really, the dietary quality is not sufficient to prevent these different forms of malnutrition. With the Fill the Nutrient Gap analysis, we looked at the cost of the diet, and just having the right amount of energy costs not too much. It varies across the country, but you can see the amount per capita per day of 3.4 thousand rupiah is not too much. But the cost of a healthy diet or a nutrient adequate diet is about 2.5 times higher. So here you see that cost, and you see how that ranges between the different provinces in the country, and especially the outer lying islands, the cost is quite a bit higher. So then we compare that cost to what people spend on food, and we find that depending on the province, between 4 to 53% of the population would not be able to afford that nutritious diet. And I want to emphasize that that nutritious diet is the lowest possible cost to meet nutrient requirements across different phases of the life cycle. So it doesn't yet factor in what foods are nice to combine and what are food preferences. It's just linear programming, selecting those foods that meet nutrient needs at the lowest possible cost. So in reality, a diet that meets all the needs comes at a higher cost. Then we also looked at the total affordability gap. So what you're seeing here is the cost of a nutrient adequate diet, that straight line in blue, and then the expenditure curve. So the people in this lower end to the left, their expenditure is lower than that cost. So they face a gap. They cannot afford that lowest cost nutritious diet. And depending on where you are, your gap may be quite small or your gap may be large. And this also, of course, then varies throughout the country. This is important to note at an individual or a household level. So how far away are people from being able to afford that? But you can also take the cumulative amount and see how that relates to, for example, other expenditures by government. So in the table, you see both. You see the total affordability gap per year in Indonesia, $1.8 billion or more than 26 trillion rupiah per year. And for those that cannot afford throughout the country, per capita, it's a gap of $51. So we already looked at the healthy diet. Rina already showed it very nicely. I like to emphasize that that diet is really based on the global burden of disease relationship between dietary intake and non-communicable disease. As we are concerned also with undernutrition, it's also really important that we emphasize appropriate nutrition early in life and what that takes. So diets will vary throughout the life course. And to stay within the planetary boundaries, it's important that there's dietary change and that there's change of the production methods, as we've clearly heard from both of the previous speakers. What we also did for Indonesia was make a very rough estimate of the non-affordability of that healthy diet. So comparing the nutrient adequate diet, where we found overall that 12% would not be able to afford it. But as I said, if we factor in dietary choices, you get to a higher non-affordability. So that's what we're showing here. This number of 40 to 50 is a very rough estimate because we just looked at what the SOFI reports cost different to us between nutrient adequate and healthy diets. We're now starting to do this for individual countries, and we see that this stepwise doesn't apply everywhere necessarily. But so just to say that affordability is a major point that needs to be addressed for people to be able to have a healthier diet. So now also looking at production methods and at the climate impact of different methods. This just shows from a paper by colleagues from Hopkins University, the greenhouse gas emissions from a kilogram of beef, depending on where, or bovine meat, where it was produced. So you can see that where it was produced and what the cattle were fed really impacts what the emissions are. So this is why it's so important to really look at how is food produced and where can changes be made to reduce environmental impact, greenhouse gas emissions in this case. This is a paper we did recently looking at the impact of Eat Lancet diet versus the current diet on greenhouse gas emissions in countries. And the countries in reddish color, actually the greenhouse gas emissions would increase compared to where they currently are at based on current food consumption. So for Indonesia, we are actually expecting a modest increase of the greenhouse gas emissions. And that is really because of the increased diversity of the diet. So preparing this transition in Indonesia well is really important because you don't want to increase a lot. You just want to increase such that you can meet your health and nutrition goals, but limit the environmental consequences of that. So this is the paper that we published last year, where we really looked at different dietary scenarios for Indonesia to see what do these scenarios, how do they score for nutritional value, for greenhouse gas emissions, for land use, and for affordability. So I'm going to show you the results, but I'm showing you the result or the conclusion first. So shifts in dietary patterns towards more nutritious diets may adversely impact the environment and natural resources, and hence increase the greenhouse gas emissions. This is for Indonesia. So globally, the change will drive it down. But for Indonesia, it may increase, and I'll show you why. So we must really seek ways to limit that impact and seek it through changes of production, changes of nutrient content, for example, by fortification. We'll cover that towards the end after I've shown you the paper's results. So here are the different dietary scenarios. So let's look at the right first. You see 5 different individuals. A young child, a child going to school, an adolescent girl, a lactating woman, and a man. And you see the foods in their diet that we arrived at using that cost of the diet optimization. So meeting all their nutrient needs at the lowest possible cost. And you can see the distribution of the different food groups that ended up in their diet. And you can see that the amount of grains and starchy roots is quite limited in energy terms. It has a lot of pulses, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, and then also some animal source foods. And more animal source foods for the adolescent girl and for the woman who's breastfeeding, which is really related to their very high mineral and vitamin or micronutrient needs. So then to the left, we have taken an average of these individuals. That's the diets with a star, the optimized household. We've got the Eat Lancet diet there, and we've also got the current diet, and that's from food balance sheets. So it's quite rough. So we've adjusted it to meet the energy levels of the other diets. So you can see the diversity within each diet varies. And then to the right, the last 3, we've taken that starting diet, the baseline, and we've said, okay, one version without dairy, one version without red meat, so it's a fish and poultry as the animal source foods, and a low food chain version. So those are basically more environmentally conscious diets, with the starting point being the current diet, and making sure there was at least enough energy and protein. So this is the protein content of these different diets, and you can see that the optimized diets, where we said it must meet the nutrient needs of an individual or of that group of individuals, has a much higher protein content, which is basically because the protein-rich foods are very rich in vitamins and minerals. The nutrient adequacy, and here the more gray, the least nutrient adequate. And of course, these 2 optimized diets, the 3rd and the 4th, they are the most optimal because they were optimized to be. I'll show you the next slide. This is the cost. So the more costly diet was basically the Eat Lancet diet, going higher than current amount. But also interesting to see, of course, then that these 2 individuals with the highest nutrient needs, their diet would also cost more. And of course, that's not how diets are typically allocated within a household. So this translates into higher vulnerability to having a diet that does not meet their needs. Here's the greenhouse gas emissions of those different diets. The black line is the target. So basically all these scenarios are higher than the target, but we have of course only taken into account a change of consumption, not a change of production. The current diet has half the greenhouse gas emissions from rice because the rice amount is so high. And in the other diets, it's really the animal source foods that contribute most. Then the optimized individual and the Eat Lancet, they have the higher greenhouse gas emission amount. And you can see Eat Lancet is really that dairy amount. We've taken that quantified example of the Eat Lancet because that's what we could use in this model. Of course, there is different ways to select it, and you can see to the right, those diets have lower emissions, but their starting point was that current diet in Indonesia. So here we're putting all these scores next to each other. So what we would like to see is a diet that scores across the top on all these axes. And yeah, none of those scenarios does that. So the highest greenhouse gas emissions are for the nutrient and the cost optimized diets, and for the Eat Lancet. You can see it to the bottom left where they are. And the lower greenhouse gas emissions is the low food chain diet, but then it doesn't score as well on nutrient content. So this gives some insights, and it shows that there are trade-offs, and it does require a more in-depth look to really assess how exactly can we tweak and which efforts should all come together to transform the food system. So I've got 3 conclusion slides. Those are the last. So basically, the diversity of the Indonesian diet is too low. So there's too much rice. The consumption of unhealthy foods is also increasing, and people are not meeting their nutrient requirements. And we see this triple burden of malnutrition. The greenhouse gas emissions are still relatively low collectively, and they're lower than of an Eat Lancet diet. So for trajectories for change, to improve nutrition and health, we must really increase dietary diversity. And that means reducing the non-affordability so that there are more choice options for the consumer. And reducing that non-affordability means that the price of both staple foods, because they're such a big part of the diet, and of healthy foods should decrease. Unhealthy foods, we should not decrease their cost because we want to increase consumption of healthy. And we need incomes to increase, including rural incomes, which then comes with better productivity. We must nudge consumers towards these healthier choices, more environmentally conscious choices, which does really require a change of dishes also. Leverage institutional demand to direct food systems change, because there's purchasing power there. And leverage that also to support the most vulnerable, such as through Sembako and by meals at the workplace, at schools, at hospitals, etc. For animal source foods, the amount that's included should be moderate, and it should be prioritized there where dietary diversity is low, and for the nutritionally vulnerable groups who need them more. And then, of course, within, you want to prioritize the foods with a lower greenhouse gas emission, such as fish, poultry, and eggs, and be more careful with beef, goat, sheep, dairy. And adopt production methods that are more climate and environmentally friendly. And important to realize, if the diet is only based on plant source foods, the diversity of that diet must be even higher to meet all your nutrient needs, especially of those that are especially contributed by animal source foods. Also, fortification is important because it can provide some nutrients that are hard to meet, because they are mainly contained in animal source foods. And we need comprehensive analytical tools. There was the example that Irina showed from the Netherlands. That is a very nice tool, but it's proprietary. We are currently developing a tool called Enhance, with which we really like to enable those analyses at the country level to provide insights for preparing those trajectories of food systems change. So I'd like to thank you very much for your attention, and draw your attention to two references where to find more on what I've just presented. So terima kasih.
Terima kasih kembali, Saskia. Thank you very much for really opening up our eyes that the goals toward reaching the healthy, sustainable diet is not easy for Indonesia. As you mentioned that there is a problem of affordability. There is a total affordability gap of around 26 trillion Indonesian rupiah per year to be able to reach the healthy, sustainable diet. And also for Indonesia, shifting toward the healthier diet will also actually increase the greenhouse gas emission, because the current diet quality, as also mentioned by Dr. Rina, is very low. The variety is very low. Yeah, and then Saskia mentioned that improving trajectories is really need to improve the trajectories. We really need to improve the affordability and also the variety of the people's diet. Well, that was actually the take-home message I can mention, but actually there are already questions from the audience. Yeah, so thank you so much, Saskia, for the presentation. Okay, so now we come to the question and answer session. I would like to invite all speakers to answer the question, but the committee will pick up the question and will show the question on the screen. Can we wait for the question now? Mbak Oki or Mbak Ninis? Okay. So I would like to remind again that for those of you who would like to ask question, please put your question on the Q&A box in the Zoom, and then the committee will take up your question. Can we have the first question? Okay, the first question is to Dr. Rina Agustina from Pak Suparman. So I will read the three questions. The first three questions, I hope it can be for all speakers. Yeah. So the first question is for Dr. Rina from Pak Suparman. The question is like this: the planetary health diet is determined based on the dietary score. The question is whether there are also available in biological scores such as gastrointestinal, protein score, or prebiotic value, etc. And then second question is, how is the planetary health diet provision for each vulnerable age group? I see also Dr. Rina has answered several of the questions mentioned in the Q&A box. So probably later on you can also could highlight your answer that was given there to give more clarification. Second question, please, Mbak Ninis. Okay. Can we have the second question for the other speaker first? Okay. The second question is for Miss Scarlett Benson from Dr. Grace Wange. Dr. Grace Wange is from the Monash, Indonesia. The question is, you mentioned one of the intervention for tipping points is on behavioral nudges. On which data did you base this statement? As I did not see clearly from your previous slide. Can you please elaborate further on this? So the question is on your tipping points, especially on behavioral nudges. And the next question is for Dr. Saskia. From Angelique Dewi, Dr. Saskia, in your opinion, can plant-based diet be the solution for Indonesia's triple burden, since it is relatively cheaper and healthier? What do you think of this statement, Dr. Saskia? Okay, so we have three questions for all speakers. I would like to invite first Dr. Rina to answer the first question.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much, Dr. Helda. And the question from Pak Suparman, my colleagues from Bandung. It's a very nice question and very timely as well. So actually, when we talk about planetary healthy diet, so we think that, oh, maybe we need to have special index to measure that. So hopefully we can generate later, yeah, of that particular things. But indeed, based on, if you want to assess the dietary quality, then there's an index to assess that. We can use the existing index depending on the research question. But if we want to relate the planetary healthy diet, for example, many studies to see, for example, it's really important to see what kind of outcomes that we would like to see from the Eat-Lancet Commission that we deliver. It's actually it's derived from many different studies, for example, randomized trial or FIDIC study or cohort study, observational study, which actually looking at the cardiovascular outcomes mostly and mortality. So from that point of view, then we can use the biological outcomes in relation to that particular outcomes. But if you are interested, because we are putting very much more on plant source protein, for example, and reduce the animal source, especially the red meat. So maybe we can, and then wants to see whether this actually give an implication to production of certain bioactive compound and perhaps also metabolites. Then we can looking at, for example, certain fatty acid, or perhaps even the gut microbiota assessment and the other aspect related to the inflammatory markers, for example. So, but if we want to see more on the immune aspect, then we can go with the cytokine. So I think this biological value or perhaps the other markers are just the same with the other assessment of the dietary assessment that has been in practice. Yeah. So I hope this answers your question. And for planetary healthy diet, provision of each vulnerable group, for the Eat Lancet Commission report, it was proposed, generated based on the 2 years old and more, and not covering the pregnancy and lactation. For children of less than 2 years, of course, there has a unique, they have a unique diet, especially because involvement of breastfeeding and also the complementary feeding. So it's not being covered from that planetary healthy diet. So, but of course, we have to look at from the existing guidelines from WHO, from the country, how actually this 1,000 days of life needs to really fulfill their requirement and where the malnutrition mostly occurs. So, but if they want to apply for this could be done as well. But of course, the essence is the variety of food. So we know that for children, for example, we have the measurement of 7 diversity food, which need to be fulfilled from 9, for example. And we also like to emphasize for pregnancy for certain protein and also iron, zinc, which is actually very important, even the calcium. So those are more to the same level of healthy diet. But the essence of the planetary healthy diet is eating variety of food. So I think it should not be something new, actually. There's something new because it's considered the earth, considered the planets. It means that if we do the variety of food, which actually have more plant source protein, high quality one with some animal source, ikan, for example, then eggs, for example, and reduce really on red meat, I think it should still be possible to meet the protein requirement, as this is also affordable for the society. But if they still want to do the red meat consumption for pregnancy, this still be possible. But of course, usually in our culture is also very occasionally. We don't eat meat every day, right? Even Minangkabau food, rendang is not eating everywhere, every time. Yes, so it's actually occasionally. So it's just already embedded in our culture, and mostly the Asian culture. So yeah, so we don't have to follow the trajectory of the other country with a westernized diet. So if we have a small amount of money, really make sure that we chose a very healthy diet. And this is what we have to emphasize to society. If we cannot buy the red meat, so we choose the plant source protein, which is a high quality and variety. Maybe that can be answered. Hopefully, UNICEF, I think they are going to, in the CHU program, they are now making the kind of a program for children eating well. A workshop has been done, and they go into the vulnerable group, but I could not share it today for this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rina, for the answer. So I would like to invite Scarlett now to answer the question, but before that, for all other speakers, both all Dr. Rina, Scarlett, and Saskia, if there is questions in the Q&A and you would like to answer it directly in the Q&A box, also we will welcome you to type your answer in the Q&A box. Okay, Scarlett, would you like to answer the question from Dr. Grace?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I've actually just added a comment to the chat. So the question is about the data and the sources around behavioral nudges. So I've sent a link to the paper that we published in the Cambridge University Press, which includes references from the sources there to behavioral nudges, but maybe I could just elaborate a bit on it. So behavioral nudges is around sort of editing choice architecture for consumers. So examples are things like changing the size of a plate, and that's a way to make people consume less, or things like in supermarkets, where do they place certain products on a shelf to just make them more visible to consumers. So there's quite a bit of sort of academic literature on the impact of behavioral nudges on choice architecture, both in the context of food and beyond. And as I say, I've added in the comments in the chat box some of the references to those papers. So please feel free to have a look at those. Okay. We've also, maybe just also worth adding, we have an MS master's student at the University of Exeter working with us over the summer, looking specifically at the topic of like the role of behavioral nudges in creating and changing consumer choice. So we're hoping to have some more literature on that in the coming months.
Okay, thank you so much, Scarlett, for the answer. So the next question for Dr. Saskia. So this is the question, Dr. Saskia.
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. I first like to say, when we say plant-based, sometimes people may think, oh, let me just cut out the animal source, and what I have left will then be a plant-based diet. That's very sort of a dangerous decision, and it's also not what is meant here. A plant-based diet that meets your nutritional needs and your health needs, that's what you need. And that basically means that the share of staple food, or the share of rice, in the case of Indonesia, must be really small. And the choice of the plant source foods, so the nuts, the lentils, the fruits, the vegetables, must A, be very diverse, and B, be a substantial amount. Currently, the food supply is not ready for that kind of a diet for the population of Indonesia. So at an individual level, you may be able to make your choices very consciously and achieve that. But if we're thinking population-based and supply being adequate and it being affordable, no, that's not the situation yet. As we said, and as Rina just mentioned, through some phases of life, animal source foods are really helpful to meet your nutrient requirements. But of course, fortification, choices within animal source foods, more lower food chain, there's many ways to improve individuals' diets and the population possibilities towards better diets.
Okay, Saskia, thank you so much. Indeed, it is a trade-off that we really need to think of on choosing the plant-based diet or totally or not. So, okay, thank you, Saskia. Ninis, could we have the next question, please? So I will take another 3 questions from the audience. And please be reminded that we will not take question orally. So all the question needs to go to the question and answer box, chat box, and then also not in the chat, but in the Q&A box. Okay, the next question is for Dr. Rina from Nur Laila. The question is, she would like to know your opinion on the food estate program that is being proposed by the Indonesian government. Could this program support the food provision from the Indonesian people? Please, Dr. Rina.
Yeah, thank you very much for excellent question, Ibu Nur. So I already answered actually on the question answer. Food estate can be actually one way to fulfill the proposed micronutrient needs, yeah, especially carbohydrate, yeah, as previously food estate. This is like a palawija, yeah, as rice has been proposed by Orde Baru, yeah. So, but respecting the trade-off from this policy, more affecting multidimensional, not only the age of consumption being more homogeneous, that threatens consumption among indigenous people, threatens the biodiversity and occupied land use change that increase the possibility of carbon dioxide release further, deteriorating our environment even further. So this program needs to be considered this, I think, especially when this has not been calculated before. So really, because it's going to open the land, yeah, so then we'll use more land to do that for that program. So really has to check the biodiversity, which occupy from the land use, and really have to think not to put the monocrops, yeah, into that particular food estate.
Okay, thank you,
Please
Dr.
answer
Rina.
the question. Maybe
Yeah.
Even Scarlett can answer more for this one.
Yeah, probably Scarlett later on can also comment on this. Okay, Ninis, the next question. Okay, the next question is from Vidya to Scarlett. Could you give more examples on strengthening rural livelihood? How to strengthen rural livelihood? Yeah. Empowering rural areas is one of the national agenda, particularly with the program of Village Fund, in which the rural or village has the authority to make regulation on how to utilize the fund. Could you give some suggestion on how all stakeholders could collaborate to improve the utilization of this money to support a better food and land use? Probably Scarlett could answer this, also could comment on the question on the food estate. Yeah, probably the question is more on the how to strengthen the rural livelihood. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe I'll just start on the food estates. So totally agree with what was said. I think, yeah, from an environmental perspective, it's a very it's quite concerning. Obviously, peatlands are hugely important in terms of climate mitigation. So anything that would lead to the degradation of further peatlands is quite concerning from an environmental perspective. Of course, I understand like the rationale, but I think for me the thing that's the most like interesting of it is that where there is a precedent of converting peatland for food production, often it hasn't actually been that successful in terms of yield. So it's not just that it's like, very environmentally concerning. It's also that like it's unclear how beneficial it will be in terms of the amount of food production that it could lead to. And there's been some really interesting studies about in Indonesia how increasing productivity has a huge potential to reduce deforestation and conversion of peatlands. So I think there's in the order of sort of 80% or something or other of productivity gains that could be achieved in certain sort of smallholder and also in large, but not to that extent, farms. So I understand why it's perceived to be necessary, but actually there's a huge opportunity to improve yields in certain farms to avoid having to convert peatland in that way. The second question on rural livelihood. So, yeah, I mean, the essence of this is that, if we're looking to avoid conversion of further ecosystems into agricultural land, you need to essentially pay individuals. Sorry, 1 second. My laptop's about to die. Hold on, plug it in. Sorry, last time. You need to essentially give people an alternative to avoid them, using the natural capital in that way. And so we talk in Growing Better when we're talking about rural livelihood, it's about giving people alternative job opportunities, making sure that there are opportunities such as that allow you to gain value from standing forests, for example. So how can we bring more kind of payment for ecosystem service models into the rural system? So that might be paying farmers for the environmental benefits of changing their practice towards more sustainable practices, or it might be, harvesting of sustainable forestry products, etc. So rural livelihood is really about, what we talk about is about new job opportunities that are in tandem with nature protection. It's also about, very importantly, recognizing that there is some need for there's a need for a just transition and potentially for some sort of support for local communities through kind of taxes and other financial mechanisms. So an example is that there are many farmers working in sort of livestock, particularly, as I say, in the global north, where we need to reduce our meat consumption, who are sort of facing a transition where there's a significant reduction in meat consumption, and they need to be supported so that they can find alternative livelihoods. What we're not talking about is a transition that leaves these people behind. So we essentially need ways to protect and allow these groups to, find alternative livelihoods through diversifying income sources.
Okay.
That sounds like a really interesting example, and I would love to hear more about this fund. It's a really great.
Yes.
Happy to converse offline and share some ideas.
Yeah, there is a village fund program actually, but still need evaluation on the implementation actually. Okay, thank you, Scarlett. And the next question for Saskia. And also I would like to invite Saskia after this question to provide or to deliver her closing remark, because Saskia needs to leave soon after this. Okay, so the question for Saskia is this: what kind of policy intervention and which government unit in Indonesia should take the lead to take into consideration all the implication of your research findings? Please, Saskia.
Yeah, thank you. That's a broad question, and it's really it is really a collective work that must be done. It was really nice to have this session opened by Anang, showing the commitment from the government side, from the sort of food supply side more, then have the Ministry of Health, have academia. I think social protection is another key sector to be included. So it is really collective, and loving also the involvement of academia through this session here today. I have already been called for my other meeting, so I would just like to thank you so much for inviting me to join this webinar, for organizing it. And to see so many participants, I feel there's good energy to work on the topic in Indonesia. So that's really nice.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Saskia, also for the presentation and for all the insightful presentation from you. Thank you so much, Saskia.
Thank you so much, Saskia.
I would like to invite now, because we are really behind the time. Yeah, so I would like now to invite Dr. Rina and also Scarlett to provide her closing remarks, because we are actually the time is up. Yeah, so I would like to invite Dr. Rina and Scarlett to give the closing remark from this webinar.
Please, Scarlett first.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be very concise because time is up. But I think my kind of resounding excitement is that we have a very clear alignment between environmental objectives and health objectives. And so, what a fantastic opportunity that we have to improve the health of populations at the same time as moving towards a healthier environment. So, I mentioned before, I'm not a nutrition expert, but this is something I'm deeply passionate about. So I'm very glad that everybody's joined this webinar and that this is something that is, very important to you. Obviously, it's a part of your kind of academic future. So yeah, very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Scarlett. And last but not least, Dr. Rina, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think it's shown that it's really strong and powerful to really shift toward healthy diet from changing the mindset and also the behavior. So there should be a commitment from international, national level to really enable those happen. And I think for Indonesian or maybe many other developing countries, we have a lot of opportunities. We need to set a kind of rapid transformation platform of food system to have the healthy food production system. Important to engage the agriculture and private sector to produce healthy and affordable food, especially with incentive for production and consumption, linked with national maybe health insurance or national social safety net. And the second is a healthy food information system is missing, so it's need to actually put into account how we can develop maybe for land information system that link production to our plate, action from agriculture to the health. And I think very important, because I actually do the research and education really to generate the youth to act and that we can have the transformer to be born and also to have a healthy district leaders to actually make this transformation happen. So thank you again for your attention. I think there's a lot of things that need to be confirmed, but I think the opportunity is now, and so we should not lose the momentum.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Rina. So we come to an end to this webinar. Yeah, so I would not conclude much because your closing statement from all the speakers probably conclude better. But some take-home message from here is that that there is we are faced with problems. Yeah, both nutrition, health, environmental and agricultural problems, and as mentioned by Dr. Rina, food is the center of it. Yeah, and then to address this problem, there is transformation in the food system that is needed, but transformation of this food system is not easy. This transformation face a lot of challenges, and then a lot of research needs to be done. A lot of research needs to be done on this, and also a lot of research needs to be done on how the transformation of the land use as the key to the food system transformation will be directed to. Yeah, all these challenges is there, but opportunities is also there. Yeah, as mentioned by Dr. Rina, the time to act is not later, but the time to act is now. So thank you so much, everyone, for your active participation, and also thank you so much to Dr. Rina, Scarlett, and Saskia, who already left the room, for your insightful presentation. I hope this webinar will be beneficial for all of us, and there will be take-home message and follow-up action that can be taken out of it. So with this, I would like to end this session, and I will give the screen to the MC. Over to you, Dr. Nadia.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bu Helda, and thank you for all speakers, Ms. Scarlett Benson, Dr. Rina Agustina, and Dr. Saskia Depi, who already left the room, for a very insightful presentation. And now, please allow me to give the conclusion of this webinar. for today. And the first one is there is an opportunity to transform food and land use system for a more sustainable future. And as a consumer, we can pursue a transition to a diet that is healthier for us and the planet according to a planetary healthy diet, eat a variety of food, and reduce consumption of sugar, salt, and highly processed food. And the recommendation, the public and the private sector leaders should make policies to improve nutrition and health, be safe for the environment and for a better future. And moreover, as an academia, we should improve the study of the fundamental changes to food and land use systems to provide an evidence-based policy and support the government to overcome the public health issue and environment as well. And then we would also say thank you to all participants who are attending this webinar, and thank you for all collaborators, the Committee of Master of Nutrition Study Program, Department of Nutrition Study of Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, Human Nutrition Research Center, IMERI Faculty of Medicine, Universitas Indonesia, Volu Coalition Indonesia, Semeo Rekfon, World Food Program, and Master of Nutrition Study Program Alumni Association or ILUNI. Finally, that ends today's event. And before I close this event, as I mentioned earlier, this is the information on elective module Diet, Planet, and Health is organized by Faculty of Medicine Universitas Indonesia to support Kampus Merdeka, Merdeka Belajar to Freedom to Learn. For all participants to get webinar materials and certificate, we would also like to remind all participants to please fill out the attendance and evaluation in following Google Form, link that will be attached in the chat box in the Zoom or comment section in the YouTube, and also appears in your screen. And we would also like to invite all participants to enroll newsletter of Volu via this link on your screen. And we would also like to beg your pardon for any inconvenience during this webinar. Thank you for spending time with us today and have a good day. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Nadia. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, all the participants, for attendance, for the committee, for collaborators. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Karina. Thank you, all speakers. Thank you, Bu Helda, and all committee and all the collaborators. Also, especially thank you to all participants.